We're live.
We are live. It's like a news reporter. I feel like I have boogers in my nose.
So today Alyssa and I are building all new hunting arrows.
Yep. Yep.
So the plan for today is to build brand new hunting arrows. We think we've settled on the ultimate hunting arrow setup. So we're gonna sit down and build a bunch of them today.
The last couple years we've been shooting some pretty heavyweight arrows, and there's definitely some pros to shooting a heavy arrow, but ultimately there was some things we disliked about it, and we've decided to back off the weight and change up our setup. We just got new bows. We got the Matthews Lift 33, both of us, so we figured it was a great time to change stuff around with our new bows. So arrow weight, length of our arrows, fletchings, broadheads, everything. We're changing all of it. So we're gonna go over our new arrow build versus our old arrow build and why we're changing. We'll talk a little bit about our old arrow setup and what we liked and disliked about a heavier arrow setup. So the total weight on these is 561 grains. And I was shooting this out of a Matthews Triax set at right around 60 pounds. And my speed I was getting out of that was right about 243. So these were moving pretty slow, straight out of the bow, which is ultimately the biggest thing we disliked about them.
And my old setup is the Easton Axis FMJ with a 300 spine, so it's 12 grains per inch. And my total weight on this thing was 645 grains, which is
Straight up log.
a straight up log, over the top, too heavy. I got excited watching Hunting Public in the winter, and I ordered 3 dozen of these.
Yeah.
So,
we got plenty of them.
So I do want to say there's definitely pros to shooting a heavy arrow. The Hunting Public is definitely not wrong. They take a lot of shots in the range of like 20 to 30 yards. Where we hunt out west and stuff, we don't do a lot of that. I mean, we'd love to shoot 20 to 30 yards. That's ideal. But we also want to be able to shoot 60 yards. So we decided to take this heavy arrow and tone it down a notch.
Take it down a notch.
Or 2, back to a more reasonable weight so that we have a more reasonable trajectory while still having enough weight to get good penetration on an animal.
Yeah, the biggest disadvantage is just you have to know the range. And if a deer or an elk is at 56 yards and they take a couple steps, that is a huge, huge difference with these arrows right here. The difference between 56 yards and 60 yards with this arrow in my old setup, I was missing an elk completely, which is pretty crazy. So
it's like a foot, probably.
Yeah,
Solid foot.
Yeah, it's dropping. At that point, it is dropping rapidly. I will say though, the thing I liked about these, I ended up shooting an elk. It was only 30 yards and he was quartered away and that thing zipped straight through everything. He went 40 yards and was done.
Okay, here's his tracks. Hey guys, he's right there. I don't know if you can see him. He's right there. You can just barely see that tandem round spot. He did not even go. He went maybe 60 yards.
Pumped about it. I shot a little pronghorn buck. We'll insert some footage here. And in the footage, it looks like I spined him. I actually double lunged him and it just dropped him. It was insane. I seriously thought I had spined him. So yeah, these things put stuff down. A negative towards them though is I shot a whitetail buck. He was 50 yards and he was aware of me. So that being said, probably shouldn't have shot that far with the buck being aware. He did string jump and I ended up hitting him back. He still died. We were able to find him. He died pretty quickly, but it wasn't ideal. So definitely gave him time to react to my arrow before it got there. So these are, at that range, they're going pretty slow.
So that is our old arrow setup.
Yes.
We've been tinkering and trying to figure out what is going to be the perfect happy medium mix of speed and penetration, and I think we have nailed it.
I think so.
What's your new arrow?
My new arrow is awesome, is what it is. It is a Victory Rip Extreme Velocity. So these things, they're a 5mm arrow, They're only 7.1 grains per inch for the 300 spine, which is what I'm shooting. And then we upgraded the insert. It's really kind of an outsert. It's got barely a little collar on there. It's a 60 grain insert. And I decided to go, on my old arrows, it was a 3-fletch Blazer. On these, I decided to go 3-fletch Max Stealth. We had custom wraps built. It's just nice if you're gonna change out your fletchings to have a wrap on there. We changed our knock to a halo lighted knock. They're easier to turn off. I feel like they're sturdier knock. So far, I love them. And on my old arrow, I was running 125 grain tip, still running 125 grain tip. So I don't know the front of center on my old arrows, but the front of center on these ones are like right at 16%, which is crazy. And yeah, overall weight, 442 grains. So it's not a lightweight arrow, it's just a good midway arrow. I want to be able to shoot these things at antelope, deer, elk, everything. So that's why I built a nice midweight arrow. And yeah, I absolutely love them.
And the arrow that I have decided to shoot is the RIP TKO with the 250 spine, which comes right in at 8.9 grains per inch. I decided to cut my arrows down a little bit shorter so they come within the riser but not all the way back to my rest. So that gave me right at 28-inch arrow. I have a 100 grain tip up front with a 60 grain insert, which puts my FOC right around 12%. And the total arrow weight on this thing is 465. So I went from my old arrows were 645 grains to my new arrows are 465. I'm also going with the AAE Max Stealth vanes and the Halo knock on the back end with the custom mountain built arrow wrap that Alyssa designed. And it's kind of fun. We got Clyde on the wrap, packing out a bowl.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's an aspirational wrap. We're conjuring up this scene for the future. It hasn't happened yet, but
Big
it's
old
coming.
Giant bull elk.
We're going with the Victory Archery Products arrows this year. They're lighter, faster, supposedly easy to pull out of targets, and that has been our experience so far.
We have not bought brand new bows for like 8 years. Both of our bows are about 8 years old. So buying a new bow is not something we do often. And we'd heard great things about the Matthews Lift. And so we figured if we're gonna buy a new bow, this is probably the one to buy. We did it. We went and bought 2 brand new Matthews lifts, and we are not sorry for the money we spent.
So Alyssa and I actually both got the exact same bows. We both went with the Lift 33, and hers is set at 70-pound draw weight with a 80% let off. Mine is at 80-pound draw weight with a 80% let off. With the new cams, new technology, we not only gained that accuracy and forgiveness, but we gained a ton of speed, especially with these new arrows that we're building. My old bow was shooting my old arrows at about 240 feet per second. And this new Lift 33 is shooting my new 465 grain arrow at 303 feet per second. Yeah. So that leaves me plenty of room. I can add a little more weight to the arrow if I want to get more in that like 290 range where it's easier to tune fixed blade broadheads and stuff. But right now I'm sticking with 300 feet per second with a 465 grain arrow for whitetails and antelope and 3D shoots and stuff like that. The other nice thing is the 80-pound draw weight with these cams is really not a problem. And same thing for Alyssa. She's very strong, but the 70 pounds is not an issue for Alyssa either. How many arrows did you shoot yesterday?
65.
65 arrows, no problem.
An hour.
Yeah, we're trying to get our strings broken in.
Yeah, we're trying to get everything broken because we have a late season whitetail hunt coming up. So that is why we're building new arrows today, more of our new arrows, and getting our bows all dialed in because we're going to be using them on our late season whitetail hunt coming up in just a couple weeks. So
right around the corner.
Yeah. This bow with my new arrows is shooting at 287 feet per second. So crazy fast compared to my old bow for sure.
So after a little testing, that is what we settled on. So we're going to get set up and build a whole bunch of arrows.
Yep.
Here we go.
The way I cut my arrows is just carbon to carbon. Some people leave the nock in there. It doesn't really matter as long as you do it consistently. This is exciting. The arrow saw that we ended up buying is the D-cut model. It's the mini cut, and it's a fairly affordable arrow saw, and it got good reviews, and so far it's been great for us, and it's been perfect for just cutting half a dozen arrows here and there at a time. So although we need a rubber mat to put it down on because it vibrates around, so I got my tape. We'll see if that works. All right, so we got the G5 arrow squaring device here. Just want to make sure the ends of our arrows are squared. All right, now we're gonna clean out all that carbon dust, just using some denatured alcohol and Q-tips. Look how dirty these things are. Let's go with the dry side. Boom, clean. Ready for an insert to be glued in. Check out those wraps. If those aren't the coolest wraps you've ever seen in your life, then we can't be friends. Just kidding. They are pretty sweet though. And we got little Clyde packing out a big old bull elk, because that's what these arrows are gonna do for us in the future. Shoot a big old bull, pack it out with Clyde. So, one thing about these arrow wraps is we got 7-inch wraps, and these Victory arrows come with that ceramic type coating, but the back 6 inches, they're not coated, so your wraps will stick. However, our wraps overlap a little bit, so they don't stick as good up front, which is where you want them probably sticking the best. So far they haven't come off of my arrows, so I'm just gonna go ahead and wrap them with the 7-inch, but we're gonna stick with what we have for now. Jason moved his up and then cut off the back end of them, but then it covers the little Clyde packing the elk, so I decided I'm just gonna leave mine. If they start coming off, I'll just have to swap them out. So, all right, one thing actually I'm gonna do, I am going to wipe down just the back of my arrow where that wrap is going to be. And there is definitely some residue on it, so. All right, so now we're ready. Pretty cool.
Those look sweet.
Now fletch them. Make sure we use our nocks that we're going to use here, which are the halo nocks. So one thing we didn't know about is like how far forward to fletch our arrows. And we went with 1 inch from the nock throat, but we're having just a tiny little bit of face contact, so we're actually going to probably do like 1 inch and 1/8, maybe 1 1/4 inch forward from that nock throat and see if that fixes our problem. So I think it will. So we're using AAE Max Stealth vanes. They're pretty heavy. They're like 8.8 grains, but they're one of the quietest vanes. I watched a couple of comparisons that people had out on YouTube, and these are one of the quietest vanes you can use. We're going three fletch, and we're also going to run a left helical. I'm running a 3-degree left helical. We got deep down into the rabbit hole of clocking your bows, so depending on which way your string's twisted, your arrow's gonna naturally want to leave your string one direction or the other. Our bows are counterclockwise, our strings are counterclockwise twisted, and so our arrows naturally want to leave to the left, and so we're going to run our helical to the left, make sure we have a left beveled broadhead if we're running a fixed blade, and try that. Some people say that it's going to unscrew your points out of your arrows because they're threaded to the right and your arrow wants to go into an animal or the target to the left. So far we haven't noticed any difference with our field points anyway, and if you think about it, like your arrow is traveling so fast and it has so much pressure against it, even if it is going to the left, that I really don't think that it's going to like stop and back out of your broadhead. So I don't think there's going to be a problem with that, but we'll keep you posted if we figure out that that is an issue and we go back to a right. So we are using this Vanemaster Pro. It's made by Last Chance Archery, and so far it seems like a pretty sweet fletching jig. Super fancy primer pin. So make sure there's no air pockets in there. Okay, I'm gonna slide that on, make contact, and then hold. Boom. Twist it to the next click. Just like to run a Q-tip down. Get rid of any extra glue on either side. All right, last step is we like to take our super glue and just add one little dot to the front and the back of our veins. And that just helps them stick that much better. You shoot them through, end up shooting them through a target or whatever. So there we go. That is one arrow done. Use this knock on my next one. Last step is to glue in our inserts. So these are 60 grain inserts. We got this insert iron super glue. On Victory's website, it said not to use hot melt or like an epoxy with these because they fit so tight. They said super glue was the best thing to use on their components. So that's what we're going with. Never used this before, but I've heard good things about it. So that's what we're gonna use. I just like to make like 3 little lines here. And then as I give her some twists here, boom, and then just wipe off the excess. And then I like to set that down on the insert so I can hold that in.
Alyssa and I each got 7 good hunting arrows built, but now we have to wait till tomorrow till we get to go out and shoot them, let all the glue cure and dry all the way, and then we get to go have some fun with them. So let's fast forward to tomorrow. We're gonna do some shooting. All right, elevation is actually pretty dang good. I like it. Maybe just a skosh left. I was just aiming right at this little dark spot right here as best I could anyway. Now that we know where these are hitting, we're gonna do a comparison of our new lighter arrows versus our old over-the-top heavy arrows. So we're gonna do a little testing. All right, we're at 30 yards. First shot is gonna be with my 465 roughly grain arrow. And then we're gonna shoot from 30 yards with my 645 grain arrow and see the difference in impact. 30 yards, shot number 1, 465 grain arrow. "30 yards, 645 grain arrow, aiming at the same spot."
It is a log.
All right, let's see the difference here. So this was, I'm aiming right here, so I was a little low when it went off, but this is my 465 grain arrow at 30 yards. This is my 645 grain arrow at 30 yards with the same aiming point. So you can see even at 30 yards, it makes a pretty big difference in trajectory. All right, we're gonna pull these and we're gonna go back to 40 yards and try again, and then we're going to try at 50 and 60 as well, but I might need to start aiming a little higher, and I'm going to put this right here so we're not flinging arrows into the dirt
Or into the elk's leg, which has a metal rod going up through it.
Yes. All right, 40 yards, 465 grain arrow. Touch left went off, but pretty good. Now 40 yards using the same aiming point with a 645 grain arrow. Gotta make sure there's no chickens in the foreground before I shoot this heavy one. Ooh, dropping fast, boys. All right, that's the difference in impact between a 465 grain arrow and a 645 grain arrow at 40 yards. Pretty crazy. It's a bigger difference at even shorter yardage than I was even thinking it would be. This is why we're switching. Like, if an animal is 3 yards farther than you think it is,
You're missing it.
Yeah, you're missing it with this arrow. With this, you'd barely even notice, honestly. Huge difference. Let's try 50 yards.
All right, so just because these are gonna start really dropping low, he's gonna start aiming for this yellow diamond, the very top of it, above the elk, instead of for the vitals of the elk, because we don't want to shoot his old arrows into the dirt.
All right, 50 yards, the 465 grain arrow. At least felt good. Can't really see it in the target. That was Josie singing away opera. Oh, Matt's out riding with his daughter.
How fun.
Nice. All right, 50 yards with a 645 grain arrow. Oh, man. You can hear the difference in speed.
Yeah.
50-yard difference between a moderately weighted 465 grain arrow and a Ranch Fairy 645 grain penetrator special. That's a huge difference. In all seriousness, that's crazy. And I mean, it just goes to show that it's over the top heavy to shoot a 600 grain arrow for hunting out west. If you're shooting over 30-40 yards, I think bumping it down a notch would be beneficial. So, pretty big difference. Pretty crazy. Oh, and for the record, I was aiming at the triangle. All right, we're gonna do one more test at 60 yards, which is kind of the end of our comfortable effective range. That's definitely at the top end unless it's a follow-up shot. So we're gonna check 60 yards. I'm gonna move this target out of the way and I'm gonna aim at the top of the yellow triangle, and then we'll just be able to actually measure the difference between the two arrows. Oh man, I better move this because I have a feeling that heavy arrow might be down there. Pretty interesting stuff. All right, 60-yard impact test, 465 grain arrow. Broke good. This my pins aren't quite all the way perfect yet at 60 yards, but what we're really checking is to see the difference in impact. So I'm just aiming at the same spot on both of these shots. Let the chickens clear, and we're good. Still in the foam. Let's go check it out. All right, that is quite a difference. Shooting the Matthews Lift 33, 80-pound draw weight, 80% let off. This is a 465 grain arrow. This is a heavy 645 grain arrow. And at 60 yards, the impact difference is 26 inches.
You're missing a whole elk.
That's more than a 2-foot difference at 60 yards, which is a pretty reasonable shot for out west here. So that's kind of the edge of our effective range. It's a realistic shot, and obviously you're going to have your pins set up for this arrow if you choose to shoot this heavy of an arrow. But that just kind of illustrates that there is no forgiveness if you're guessing yardage with those heavy arrows. So that's why we're making the switch, going 465 grain arrow. Pretty good FOC, shouldn't have any problems with penetration, and much more forgiving when you're guessing yardage.
What are you doing?
Putting the stake back in because I thought it might be close to hitting it. And you can see the hole right there. It would have just barely missed it. So good thing I pulled it.